all of those things matter. You know, the U.S. moving silver into the critical minerals list, and putting frame silver as a national security issue, not a collectible metal issue. What you basically have is a situation where the paper price and the physical reality are on a collision course. And central banks, as you mentioned, have been buying largely because of no counterparty risk. And the fact that it has outperformed, both gold and silver have outperformed just about everything. Gold, going back 25 years, has doubled the 10-year Treasury, has no counterparty risk. Look at it over the last few years. 2 years ago, gold up 45%, the 10-year Treasury up 4.5%. That's 10 times a gain, no counterparty risk. Last year, gold up 80%, the 10-year Treasury up 4. That's 20 times, no counterparty risk. Look at it, look at it where we are at silver. Silver up 150%, 10-year Treasury up 4. To me, I am looking at, in terms of signals anyway, I am looking at a market that is seeing massive, and I mean massive, deliveries, Daryl, into COMEX. To me, first and foremost, above all else, that's really what matters, because what you are witnessing are the most well-informed traders in the world. Forget about the fact that we're seeing billions and billions and billions and billions come into the market, into COMEX, every single month, which no one's talking about on the mainstream, which I just don't get. But the people at that level who have that kind of wealth, they're also connected to the information. They're not doing it just for the hell of it. These people are at the highest level of government, at the highest level of finance and of influence. And when we see what amounts to literally billions every single month coming in, to me, that signals not only that the metal itself is probably worth more than the money being used to purchase it, but it also signals to me that it is a physical delivery that is, I guess you could say, there's a fight going on over real delivery demand over paper promises. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. Now, this is what I'm about to tell you is true of everything we've seen every month since a year ago, November, when Trump won the election. But in the month of December, there was 3,706,000 ounces of gold delivered on COMEX. Well, 3,706,000 times, at the time, $4,300 an ounce. Do the math. You're at, $13-14 billion. And how about the 64,730,000 troy ounces of silver stopped and issued and stopped? That's the same thing as delivered. What's 65 million ounces of silver worth at $80 an ounce? And if a mint box of silver maples or eagles weighs 42 pounds, what does 65 million ounces weigh? And at this level, it's not even the money, Daryl, as much as it is the information that is pushing these people to do it. Now, this has gone on again. Here we are in January, and we've seen roughly 6 or 7 days on the delivery month, which is not a major scheduled delivery month, and yet we've already seen in silver almost 7,000 contracts stand for delivery. About pretty damn close to 35 million ounces of silver has already been delivered in January. So between December and January, you have 100 million ounces of silver that has stood for delivery. Now there's still another 2 weeks left in the January contract, but this has been going on every single month. And I've been screaming about it on a central bank level since 2020. You go back and watch any of the 6,000 videos I did in that time frame, and you will see this has been a primary thesis of mine, that when the most well-funded and well-informed traders on the planet take possession and remove counterparty risk, stand for delivery at these kinds of numbers, which we've never seen this before on COMEX, never. And where is the mainstream media with any journalistic integrity at all? Where is the idiot Jim Cramer? Where are all of these people who are supposedly doing what's right by the people that they're talking to, and instead they're leading them like the sheep to slaughter? This, to me, is all you need to know. Yes, on top of it, the United States government classified silver a critical mineral. Geez, do you think the U.S. government could maybe be taking possession of 100 million ounces of silver? I don't know. Sure seems that way to me. And forget about the fact that the European Union did it a year ago, and forget about the fact that China, everyone talks about them tightening the noose on exports. Well, what people don't really talk about is what they said in November, which is that we are prioritizing silver for domestic needs before anything else. Then they put on the export restrictions, and they're responsible for refining 70% of the world's silver doré. Yeah, things are getting very interesting. But in terms of the noise and the periphery, what else do you need to know? But that the biggest money in the world who knows the information actually probably creates the information, or is real close with those that do, says, yeah, let's stamp for possession every month of billions and billions and billions. And shh, don't tell anyone. I have to look over my back and make sure, I don't got someone looking to stab a knife in my shoulder, because I've been saying this for months on end now, and, it's happening and it's accelerating. December was the biggest delivery ever in silver, ever, for a month of December in the history of the COMEX market, which goes back to 1974. So, wow. I don't know, man. Things are starting to get crazy. All of those things matter. The U.S. moving silver into the critical minerals list, and putting frame silver as a national security issue, not a collectible metal issue. What you basically have is a situation where the paper price and the physical reality are on a collision course. And central banks, as you mentioned, have been buying largely because of no counterparty risk. And the fact that it has outperformed, both gold and silver have outperformed just about everything. Gold, going back 25 years, has doubled the 10-year treasury, has no counterparty risk. Look at it over the last few years. 2 years ago, gold up 45%, the 10-year treasury up 4.5%. That's 10 times a gain, no counterparty risk. Last year, gold up 80%, the 10-year treasury up 4. That's 20 times, no counterparty risk. Look at it, look at where we are at silver. Silver up 150%, 10-year treasury up 4. I think what you are seeing is the fact that it's an issue of trust. People don't trust. Not only do they not trust really the institutions that are issuing the treasuries and the government standing behind it, who, to your point, can sanction, but it's also a lack of trust, I think, in the markets. And, I think in essence what you are seeing is the fact that these entities who understand where this is all going would rather have the real physical metal instead of paper promises. And I think that is really what it's all about, is that we're moving away from a system that, look, we stood on a moral high ground after World War II. We were the beacon of truth and honesty across the globe. And I think that is being questioned on every level, not just what's happening geopolitically, but it's with our institutions, our markets, those that run the markets, our everything, our judicial system, our Federal Reserve. Look what's happening right now at the Federal Reserve. And, it's interesting because, as an aside, the spokesman for Goldman Sachs said that if the market suspects that the Fed loses independence, gold will go to the moon. Well, what independence? Who's Stephen Mirren? Stephen Mirren is the architect of the Mar-a-Lago Accord, who was Trump's advisor, who filled the first vacated spot of the Fed several months ago. And so what you are witnessing is the world saying, we don't really trust their markets. We don't like how they go around the world and imposing these types of military supported missions. Like, I was listening to Gerald Celente the other night, and he says, can you imagine if Putin went in to Kiev and took Zelensky and his wife? Oh my God, the outrage. Or Xi did it in Taiwan. Took the president and his wife for whatever reason. Yes, the guy's a narco and whatever. But the point of it is that, we invaded Iraq 22 years ago looking for weapons of mass destruction. Didn't find any, destroyed the country, toppled the regime, and guess what? We're still there. And I think that the world is getting, getting tired of it. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
there is, I think, evidence that the physical market is starting to overrule the paper market. And when that dam breaks, I think the move isn't polite. And this is all about trust or lack thereof. When you see these kind of deliveries instead of paper promises, when you see countries standing to change the rules by implementing strategic minerals lists or tightening exports, this is becoming real very quickly. When we started the year 2025, silver went from the mid 20s, low 30s early in the year to upper 70s by year end, and now we're trading at almost 90. This is not, and as far as I'm concerned, this isn't just a gradual rise in the price of silver. This is silver repricing, and gold repricing, which doubled. And I think these things are beginning to happen, and it's because that there has been, for many years, central bank suppression on both gold and silver in the West. Silver for the military-industrial complex, and gold because of Gibson's paradox, the inverse relationship between real interest rates and gold. So they had a vested interest, they being the Western elite, the central banks, in holding these things down. What makes things very different now than at any time I've ever done this is the ability to stand for delivery. And the countries that are doing so prior to whoever's doing it here in the U.S., these were, I think countries that for many years were not sophisticated or coordinated or motivated or had any interest in challenging the West. And they're doing it now by standing for delivery, which is a completely legal thing to do. And when you have exchanges that rehypothecate, in other words, sell the same contract over and over and over again, creating tons of volume and extra cash and the ability to, in essence, fleece the market because no one stands for delivery, it's easy to do. But when everyone says, here's the vulnerability in the entire system and it's about standing for delivery, it's like Bernie Madoff. Everyone was happy with Bernie making big monthly checks until they said, but we want our principal back. And then the whole thing fell apart. Well, it's the same thing here. It's the vulnerability to the Western system that has been exposed by countries that are coordinated and motivated and wealthy and sophisticated that were third world 20 years ago. Now they're not. And this is creating a very, very big problem. Anyone foolish enough to be naked short in this market, I think, deserves what they get. And I honestly believe that we will find that out sooner than later as some of these banks are hemorrhaging. And there's a report out of the Economic Times that says it's the U.S. banks that are long, and that and they have quietly flip-flopped, leaving the European banks and maybe a bank or two in Canada naked, exposed to what could be an existential threat in the rise of metals prices. And anyone that doesn't think that's possible, I would urge them to watch the YouTube video that was done between Bart Chilton and Andrew Maguire, and the same thing between Bart Chilton and Chris Marcus, Arcadia Economics, when he spoke of Bear Stearns going bankrupt largely because of them being on the wrong side of the largest paper short in the world. And it went against them from 9 to 21. And that is one of the craziest interviews I've ever seen in my career. I think it's one of the one or two biggest, most important interviews you can ever watch. If you own metals, you're on the wrong side of this trade to the level that these Western banks are. And it is an existential threat when prices are moving the way they are because of standing delivery requests by not only, whoever's doing it here in the States, very sophisticated money, but also the central banks around the globe.